For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Tabi Shomuligai. Joining me today is Professor Raymond Suttner, here to unpack part one of Donald Trump, the day before and the morning after. Welcome, Raymond.
Thank you very much.
So, what do you mean by the day before and the morning after in relation to the US President Donald Trump's re-election?
What I'm saying there is that we have to understand the conditions that made Trump's election and re-election possible, because they also tell us something about what will happen when he's left the presidency, but they also tell us things about our own society. For example, when I refer to the day before, I'm thinking of a society that is very disillusioned with the political system, with the two-party system of the Democrats and the Republicans. And we need to look at ourselves, because no society is immune to this right-wing populism or fascist thing. In our case, we only had 36%, if I am correct, of the electorate voting last year. So we need to be aware that there's a fairly high level of disillusionment amongst the South African population. But in the case of the US, it goes along with a whole lot of things. The whole state of democracy in the United States, the courts, all these things have around them a sense of despair, a sense that things are not changing and they are getting worse than before. And when Trump leaves the presidency, it's likely that they'll face similar problems.
And how has Trump's presidency developed since you wrote your article nearly 3 months ago?
What's interesting is this 3 months ago didn't make much difference to my interpretation. What I think is things have got worse, but they are the same pattern that I analyzed. For example, when I say it's got worse, we didn't then know fully how Trump would relate to the question of legality. What we're seeing now is large-scale illegality in the United States, defying court decisions, police actions that are questionable by the Constitution, and when a court sets them aside, Trump just ignores the court. So you've got a very serious situation, a crisis of legality, crisis of constitutionalism, and a crisis of democracy in the United States.
Also, Raymond, you speak of Trump wreaking havoc with the US, also international institutions and practices.
Yes. Well, the obvious case is Israel, where Israel can practically do what it wants. When Trump says something, it's unintelligible, but Israel takes it as a wink and a nod that they can do what they like. And what is happening internationally is that the Israeli situation is sidelining international law, International Court of Justice, United Nations, all these things. So it's the institutions and practices that were built up over decades are being completely sidelined. I think we need to bear in mind that already the war against the Palestinians has spilled over into Lebanon, now Iran, and the Israelis, I think it's best for them if there's an all-out war in the whole of the Middle East. And that can become a world war. So it's very irresponsible. He's unintelligible when he speaks. However, one thing is clear, it's not good for democracy, it's not good for the rule of law, and a number of values that the United States has sometimes held dear.
And lastly, what has Trump's presidency meant for the international relations?
It's a situation where there's a fair amount of fluidity. For example, Canada was a very close tied ally of the United States. And through Trump's threats over tariffs and a whole lot of things, they've more or less split with the United States. And it's this whole threat to the notion of a dominant superpower the US because they're taking no nonsense from the United States. That's just one example. I think the World Court case, the International Court of Justice case, was a very important counterweight to these actions of the right-wing United States president and his cabinet. And there's a pushback, but it's not yet a completely unified global South. And I'm not sure it will come to that.
Thanks, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about part one of Donald Trump the day before and the morning after.